You know that special kind of humiliation that comes with being roasted like a Thanksgiving turkey in front of your girlfriend's corporate cronies? The kind where everyone laughs a little too hard, sips their overpriced cocktails, and you can practically hear them mentally writing you off as that guy. Yeah, that was my Thursday night at Aqua in Brickell, Miami's premier rooftop monument to pretentious networking and $14 mojitos. Let me back up. Calvin Mercer here, 36 years old, supposedly the experimental phase boyfriend of one Giselle Armstrong, 33, regional manager at Summit Capital. That's what she called me that night. Experimental. Like I was some craft beer she was testing out, before going back to the reliable imported stuff. Standing there in my button-down and jeans, surrounded by her colleagues in their designer power suits, I was apparently the comic relief nobody asked for, but everyone appreciated. The setup was classic. Giselle had been dating me for 2 years, living in my Coconut Grove condo for 18 months, and spending exactly 0% of that time actually understanding what I did for a living. To be fair, I never corrected her assumptions. When your girlfriend thinks your investor meetings are just you networking your way through unemployment, and she pats your head like a golden retriever every time you mention commercial real estate, you start to wonder if the relationship has an expiration date stamped somewhere you haven't noticed yet. But that night was something special. We arrived at Aqua around 7 on a Thursday in early October. The Miami skyline was doing its usual show-off routine, all pink and orange and purple like God's personal Instagram filter. Giselle was already in her element before we hit the elevator, adjusting her Armani blazer, checking her reflection in every available surface, practicing that carefully curated laugh she reserved for people who could influence her career trajectory. I was furniture. Expensive furniture she could show off, sure, but furniture nonetheless. Her crew was already 3 drinks deep when we arrived. Marcus, the VP with the personality of lukewarm oatmeal, Darcy, the senior analyst who treated every conversation like a hostile deposition, and Felicia, Giselle's supposed best friend / primary competition, who smiled like a shark that just spotted a wounded seal. They were seated at the corner table, the one that screamed, "We're important enough to get the best view," overlooking Biscayne Bay and the port of Miami. The small talk started innocently enough. Market trends, office politics, someone's boat. I nursed my craft IPA, the one Giselle always made fun of because apparently real professionals only drank wine or top-shelf liquor. Marcus was mid-sentence about some acquisition deal when Felicia, bless her toxic heart, decided to drag me into the conversation. "So, Calvin, what is it you do again? Giselle's always so vague about it." I opened my mouth. Giselle beat me to it. Cal's in a transitional period career-wise. Lots of exploring, very experimental. She said it with this little laugh, the one that invited everyone else to join in. They did. Marcus chuckled into his whiskey. Darcy smirked. Felicia's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. But you know, it's important to have someone who makes you laugh, who's supportive. Ambition isn't everything, right? Ambition isn't everything. Let that sink in. This woman, who was currently living rent-free in my place, driving the Audi I'd bought her for her birthday, wearing the Cartier bracelet I'd given her for our 2-year anniversary, was sitting there telling her colleagues that her boyfriend lacked ambition. The table nodded sympathetically. Poor Giselle, dating down but staying positive about it. What a saint. I should mention the context here. For 15 years, I'd been quietly building a commercial real estate portfolio across the Southeast. Started with a couple of strip malls in Fort Lauderdale, moved into office complexes in Atlanta, expanded into mixed-use developments in Charlotte. Nothing flashy, nothing that required me to brag about it at cocktail parties or post on LinkedIn every 5 minutes. I kept my head down, made smart acquisitions, built relationships with the right investors, and let the numbers speak for themselves. Those investor lunches Giselle mocked. Due diligence meetings for what would become the biggest deal of my career. Those boring conference calls she complained about. Negotiations with private equity firms who were helping me structure a hostile takeover. That networking with unemployed people she joked about. Meetings with the board members of Summit Capital who were very interested in selling their stakes to someone who actually understood the industry. But sure, experimental phase, very cute. The conversation continued. More drinks arrived. Giselle got bolder, encouraged by the laughter. She told the story about how I'd tried to explain cap rates to her, and she'd fallen asleep. Big laughs. She mentioned my adorable habit of reading the Wall Street Journal every morning like some old man. More laughs. She described my home office as my little business cave where I played pretend investor. The table was dying. I was dying too, just in a different way. Marcus leaned back in his chair, swirling his whiskey, looking at me with this expression that mixed pity with amusement. Hey man, no shame in taking your time figuring things out. Economy's rough. Lots of people reinventing themselves these days. Reinventing myself. I was 36 years old with a portfolio valued north of $400 million, and this guy was talking to me like I was a recent college grad, trying to figure out if I should learn to code or become a yoga instructor. I finished my beer, set it down carefully, stood up. Every eye at the table turned to me, expecting maybe some defensive explanation, or perhaps a sheepish exit to the bathroom where I could compose myself. Instead, I pulled out my wallet, dropped 2 20s on the table for my beer and appetizers I hadn't touched, and looked at Giselle. Good luck with the experimental phase of your career. I have a feeling you're going to need it. Then I walked. Just straight up left. No dramatic speech, no confrontation, no explanation. I called an Uber from the elevator, blocked Giselle's number before I hit the lobby, and rode home in silence while my driver played reggaeton and asked me if I was okay. I told him I was great. Best I'd felt in months, actually. He didn't believe me, but he stopped asking questions. The thing about humiliation is that it clarifies priorities real fast. Sitting in that Uber, watching Miami's neon blur past the window, I made a decision. Not about revenge exactly, just about honesty. About stopping the charade of pretending to be something I wasn't, of letting someone underestimate me because it was easier than proving them wrong, of being patient with people who mistook kindness for weakness. I got home around 9:30, poured myself a proper bourbon, sat in my little business cave and checked my emails. My attorney had sent the final documents an hour earlier. Everything was signed. Everything was done. The deal I'd been working on for 8 months, the one that would change everything, was officially closed as of 5 p.m. that afternoon, right about the time Giselle was ordering her second rosé and warming up her stand-up routine. I didn't call her, didn't text. Just sat there in the dark, sipping Blantons and waiting for the news to break. It would be public by morning. Bloomberg would run it. The Wall Street Journal would pick it up. And Giselle, who spent every morning scrolling through financial news like it was gospel, would see it before her first coffee. I almost felt bad. Almost. Then I remembered the word experimental and felt significantly better. The thing about living with someone who fundamentally misunderstands you is that you start collecting moments, little instances of casual disrespect that you file away in some mental drawer labeled reasons this won't last. I had years' worth. Take our morning routine, for instance. Every single day, Giselle would wake up at 6, commandeer the entire bathroom for 45 minutes, emerge looking like she was about to negotiate a peace treaty, and then spend breakfast scrolling through her phone while I made coffee. My coffee in my French press, with beans I'd ordered from a roaster in Portland. She'd take the cup I handed her without looking up, sip it while reading Bloomberg, and occasionally mutter things like, "God, another tech startup valuation makes no sense," or, "Commercial real estate is so boring right now." Commercial real estate, my entire career. Boring, cool, great, love that for us. Or the time 6 months back when her mother visited from Charleston. Lovely woman, actually. Former real estate attorney, sharp as a tack, asked me intelligent questions about cap rates and market trends over dinner. Giselle cut her off mid-conversation. "Mom, please, you're going to bore poor Calvin to death. He doesn't really do the finance talk thing." Her mother looked confused. I looked at my salmon. The evening proceeded with discussions about Giselle's promotion prospects and whether Felicia was secretly sabotaging her career. The friends were worse. Giselle's entire social circle treated me like a golden retriever she'd rescued from a shelter. Sweet, loyal, not particularly bright, but good for emotional support. Her birthday party last March was a masterclass in benevolent condescension. Her college roommate Petra cornered me by the bar at Bayside and asked, with the most sincere concern, if I'd considered going back to school. It's never too late to pivot, Calvin. My cousin did an MBA at 42. I was 35. I already had an MBA from UNC Chapel Hill. But sure, Petra, great advice, life-changing stuff. The absolute peak, though, was Thanksgiving last year. We went to Giselle's sister's place in Coral Gables. Her sister, Simone, was married to a hedge fund manager named Barrett who wore loafers without socks and said disrupt unironically every third sentence. The guy made a toast before dinner about building empires and playing to win, while staring directly at me, like I was some cautionary tale about mediocrity. Giselle squeezed my hand under the table. Supportive gesture, right? Wrong. It was a sympathy squeeze, the kind you give someone at a funeral. I was the dead career she was mourning in real time. After dinner, while the women were in the kitchen and the men were in Barrett's whiskey library, which was exactly as pretentious as it sounds, he offered me career advice. You know, Cal, Summit's always looking for good facilities managers. Giselle could probably get your resume in front of the right people. It's not glamorous, but steady work, benefits, all that. Facilities manager. The man thought I should aspire to fix air conditioning units in buildings I literally own stakes in. I smiled, nodded, thanked him for thinking of me. Giselle was so proud of me for being coachable. Back to Thursday night. After I got home and confirmed the deal was closed, I did what any reasonable person would do. I poured another bourbon and started making a list. Not a revenge list, exactly. More like a consequences of underestimating people list. A karma's about to work overtime list. A let's see how experimental this gets list. First item, Summit Capital. The acquisition had been in the works since February. CM Holdings, my lovely little LLC that nobody except my attorneys and accountants knew existed, had been quietly buying up shares from disgruntled board members who were tired of the company's stagnant leadership. By August, we had 42%. By September, 51%. By Thursday at 5 p.m., we had controlling interest at 68%. The remaining shareholders had folded faster than lawn chairs in a hurricane once they saw our offer. Giselle had no idea. How could she? She never asked about my work beyond surface-level pleasantries. Those contracts I was always reviewing at the dining table. Acquisition documents. Those conference calls that annoyed her because I took them during her favorite cooking shows. Negotiations with investment banks. That boring weekend trip to Charlotte she'd refused to join me on. Meeting with Summit's largest institutional investor, who wanted out. The beautiful irony was that Giselle had actually helped inadvertently. She'd complained so much about Summit's leadership, about the stagnant strategy, about regional managers getting overlooked for promotions, about the old boys club mentality. She'd essentially given me a detailed analysis of every weakness in the company's structure. I'd taken notes, made calls, found opportunities. She'd thought I was just being a supportive boyfriend, listening to her vent. I was conducting market research. Second item on the list, that dining table at Aqua, where I'd been humiliated. The restaurant was on the 43rd floor of the Marquis Tower. Beautiful building, prime location, decent cash flow. The ownership group had been looking to sell for months. My real estate attorney had mentioned it in passing during one of our calls. I'd made a note. Time to revisit that opportunity. Third item, Thea Collins. Remember her? Probably not, because Giselle certainly never mentioned her with respect. Thea was Giselle's assistant at Summit, a 28-year-old CPA from Orlando with more financial acumen in her left thumb than Marcus had in his entire whiskey-soaked brain. Giselle treated her like a personal servant. Coffee runs, dry cleaning pickups, covering for her when she took 2-hour lunches. Thea was brilliant, underutilized, and absolutely ready for a shot at actual responsibility. I'd met Thea exactly twice. Once at a company holiday party where Giselle had literally forgotten to introduce us, and Thea had apologized for existing in our vicinity. Once at a charity golf tournament where Thea had been forced to caddy for Giselle despite being violently allergic to grass pollen. Both times I'd thought the same thing. This woman is wasting her potential working for someone who doesn't see it. Around 11 p.m., my phone started vibrating. Blocked numbers don't ring, but they do leave voicemails. 13 of them, to be precise. I didn't listen to any of them, didn't need to. I could imagine the progression, confusion, anger, panic, bargaining, more anger, desperation, the 5 stages of realizing you've catastrophically miscalculated. My email inbox was better. The first one came at 11:47 p.m. Subject line, call me. Message, Calvin, what is going on? Call me right now. The question marks multiplied with each subsequent email. By email number 7, she'd dropped the punctuation entirely and gone full caps lock. You cannot do this to me, I built that company. Technically incorrect. She'd managed the Southeast region for 4 years. Decent performance, nothing spectacular. She hadn't built anything. She'd maintained existing client relationships and hit quarterly targets that were, let's be honest, not particularly ambitious. But sure, Giselle, you built it, with your own 2 hands, like a pioneer woman churning butter. The real masterpiece arrived at 1:33 a.m. Calvin, I know you're upset about dinner, but this is insane. You can't punish an entire company because of one bad night. This is my career, my life, everything I've worked for. Please, we can talk about this like adults. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, but you're being childish and vindictive and, frankly, kind of scary right now. Hurt my feelings, like I was a toddler who'd been denied a cookie, not a grown man who'd been systematically belittled and dismissed for 2 years, not someone who'd just executed the largest acquisition of his career, not the person who now controlled her professional future, just a sensitive guy with wounded pride. I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I opened a bottle of Camus Cabernet, the one Giselle had been saving for a special occasion, and watched SportsCenter while planning my next moves. The Dolphins had lost again. Somehow that felt appropriate. Miami's football team continuing its tradition of disappointing everyone who believed in them. I could relate. By 3 a.m., I'd outlined the entire strategy. Summit needed restructuring, new leadership in key positions, fresh perspective, modern approach, regional shake-ups to optimize performance, all very corporate, all very professional, all very much going to transform Giselle's life in ways she couldn't begin to imagine. The best part? Everything I was planning was completely legitimate. Good business, smart management, beneficial for shareholders and employees. I wasn't being vindictive, I was being efficient. If it happened to coincide with poetic justice, well, that was just good fortune smiling on the prepared. I fell asleep on my couch around 4, empty wine glass on the coffee table, SportsCenter replaying highlights I'd already seen twice. Last thought before passing out. Tomorrow was going to be spectacular. Not for everyone, obviously, but for me, absolutely spectacular. Friday morning came fast, 6 a.m. And like clockwork, except this time there was no Giselle monopolizing the bathroom, no sound of hairdryers and makeup brushes, no weather report about how Felicia was definitely undermining her at work. Just silence. Beautiful, peaceful, uninterrupted silence. I made coffee, checked Bloomberg on my phone. There it was, front page of the business section. CM Holdings completes acquisition of Summit Capital in $341 deal. The article outlined the basics. Controlling stake, new management structure, strategic repositioning. My attorney had released a statement about exciting opportunities for growth and innovation. Very corporate, very bland, very deliberately revealing nothing about the human behind CM Holdings. My phone started ringing at 6:15. Unknown numbers, probably reporters, probably analysts, definitely not Giselle because she was still blocked. I ignored all of it, took my coffee to the balcony, and watched the sun come up over Biscayne Bay while mentally preparing for the most satisfying day of my professional life. Experimental phase, huh? Let's see how this experiment turns out. Friday morning, 7:30 a.m., and my phone had stopped ringing. Not because people had lost interest, but because my attorney, Hugh Brennan, had sent out a professionally worded statement requesting that all media inquiries be directed through official channels. Hugh was good like that. 62 years old, partner at a white shoe firm in Coral Gables, looked like someone's disappointed grandfather, but negotiated like a Vegas poker shark. He'd been handling my acquisitions since my first strip mall purchase back in 2010. Never questioned my strategies, never leaked information, never charged less than $500 an hour, worth every penny. I texted him at 7:45. Summit restructuring. Need complete organizational chart, performance reviews for all regional managers, and employment contracts by Monday. His response came back in 30 seconds. Already on your desk. Also, your girlfriend is in our lobby. Former girlfriend? She's asking for you. Security's concerned. Of course she was. I replied, not today. Have someone walk her out politely if she returns trespassing. Hugh sent back a thumbs-up emoji. Even my attorney was more restrained with emojis than most people. I showered, put on my favorite Tom Ford suit, the charcoal one Giselle had always said made me look like I was trying too hard, and drove to Summit Capital's downtown Miami headquarters. 20-story glass tower, marble lobby, that distinctive smell of expensive air conditioning and corporate anxiety. I'd been here exactly once before, 8 months ago, meeting with the former CEO who'd been cautiously exploring exit opportunities. He'd retired comfortably to Scottsdale 3 weeks ago with a golden parachute that could have funded a small nation. Smart man. Saw the writing on the wall and got out gracefully. The receptionist did a double take when I walked in. Her desk plate read, Monica. She was maybe 24, already mastering that professional smile that hid complete confusion. Good morning, sir. Do you have an appointment? Calvin Mercer, I own the building now. Is the executive conference room available? Her smile froze. Rebooted. Came back brighter. Mr. Mercer. Of course. Yes. I'll call up to... Would you like coffee, water? Should I notify anyone that you're here? Coffee, black. And yes, notify everyone with regional manager in their title that there's a mandatory meeting at 9 a.m. conference room. Non-negotiable attendance. She nodded so fast I worried about whiplash. I took the elevator to the 19th floor, where the executive offices lived, and found my new workspace. Corner office, floor-to-ceiling windows, view of the Atlantic that probably costs 6 figures annually in real estate value. The nameplate still read, David Morrison, Chief Executive Officer. David was currently playing golf in Arizona. I made a mental note to have new nameplates made. Hugh's files were waiting on the desk. Organizational charts, performance metrics, personnel records, everything I needed to make informed decisions that would coincidentally reshape several lives in deeply ironic ways. I spent the next hour reading through Giselle's file specifically. 4 years at Summit. Started as senior analyst, promoted to regional manager after 18 months. Performance reviews were consistent. Meets expectations. Solid contributor. Reliable team player. Nothing exceptional. Nothing terrible. The corporate equivalent of a B- student who shows up on time and turns in assignments, but never quite distinguishes themselves. Her salary was $147,000 annually. Not bad. Not spectacular for Miami's cost of living, especially considering she presented herself as some kind of financial empress. More interesting were the complaints. 3 formal HR reports in 2 years about her management style. One from Thea Collins regarding unprofessional delegation of personal errands during work hours. One from a junior analyst who'd quit after Giselle had, according to the report, publicly berated him for a minor error in front of clients. One from the facilities manager, ironically enough, about Giselle demanding office renovations that exceeded her budgetary authority. The facilities manager thing made me laugh out loud, alone, in my new corner office. Like a Bond villain, but with better justification. At 8:55, I walked into the conference room. 12 regional managers were already seated, looking various shades of nervous. Marcus was there, whiskey-free at this hour, but sweating through his Oxford shirt. Darcy sat ramrod straight, legal pad ready like she was preparing for a deposition. Felicia had chosen a seat near the door, always keeping exit strategies open. And Giselle. Oh, Giselle. She'd positioned herself at the opposite end of the table from the head seat, power position by default, wearing her burgundy power suit and an expression that mixed defiance with barely concealed panic. Her eyes met mine. Held. I smiled. Sat down at the head of the table. Watched her face cycle through several emotions in rapid succession. Good morning, everyone. I'm Calvin Mercer. As of yesterday evening, CM Holdings controls 68% of Summit Capital. I appreciate you all being here on short notice. The room was silent. Someone coughed. Marcus shifted in his seat. Giselle's jaw could have cut diamonds. I continued. I've spent the morning reviewing performance metrics, client portfolios, and operational efficiency across all regions. Summit has strong fundamentals, but has been underperforming market averages for 3 consecutive quarters. That changes today. We're implementing immediate restructuring to optimize regional management and expand our market presence. More silence. Darcy was writing furiously. Felicia was staring at Giselle. Marcus looked like he was calculating his severance package. First change, Southeast Regional Management. Giselle Armstrong will be transitioning to our Midwest Expansion Initiative, effective immediately. She'll be relocating to Des Moines, Iowa, to open and establish our new regional office there. It's a ground floor opportunity with significant growth potential. Giselle's face went from pale to crimson in under 3 seconds. You cannot be serious. Completely serious. Des Moines is an underserved market with excellent opportunities for commercial development. You'll have full autonomy to build the operation from scratch. It's exactly the kind of leadership challenge that develops careers. Calvin, her voice was ice. Can we discuss this privately? This is business, Giselle. Nothing private about personnel decisions. You'll receive your relocation package by end of day. Des Moines office opens November 1st. That gives you 4 days to relocate. She stood up. Chair scraped. Everyone else suddenly found their legal pads fascinating. This is vindictive and petty, and everyone in this room knows it. Actually, it's strategic market expansion. Iowa's commercial real estate market is growing at 8% annually. But if you feel the position doesn't align with your career goals, HR can discuss alternative arrangements. I let that hang. Alternative arrangements meant resignation. We both knew it. She sat back down. Barely. I continued. Second change, Thea Collins will be promoted to Southeast Regional Manager. Effective immediately. She's been with the company for 3 years, consistently exceeded performance expectations, and has intimate knowledge of the regional client base. Now Giselle looked like she might actually combust. Thea, her assistant, the woman she'd sent on coffee runs and blamed for her own mistakes, taking her job, her office, her team, in Miami, where Giselle had spent 4 years building her network and reputation. Thea doesn't have management experience, Giselle managed. She does now. Third change, Marcus Whitmore will be transitioning to senior advisory role, remote position, reporting directly to Thea. We're flattening the hierarchical structure to improve efficiency. Marcus looked relieved. Remote meant he could drink whiskey at home instead of hiding it in his desk drawer. Thank you, Mr. Mercer. I appreciate the opportunity. 4th through 8th changes involved other regional shuffles, performance improvement plans, and budget reallocations. I delivered them clinically, professionally, with all the warmth of a tax audit. By 9:45, the meeting was over. Everyone filed out except Giselle, who remained seated staring at the conference table like it might offer answers. I gathered my files, started walking toward the door. Calvin, please. I stopped, turned, waited. Is this really how you want to handle this? Destroying my career because I hurt your feelings at a dinner party? I'm not destroying anything. I'm making sound business decisions based on performance data and market opportunities. If you interpret that as personal, perhaps that says more about your professional security than my management style. You know exactly what you're doing. This is revenge. Petty, cruel revenge. I walked back to the table, leaned on it, looked her dead in the eye. You called me experimental, said I lacked ambition, let your friends condescend to me for 2 years while you smiled and nodded, and never once corrected them. You assumed I was some aimless guy you were graciously tolerating while you built your empire. You were wrong. About all of it. This isn't revenge, Giselle. This is consequences. Turns out they look pretty similar. I was joking. You know I was joking. Jokes require humor. That was just cruelty with an audience. She stood up, grabbed her bag, walked to the door, stopped. You're going to regret this. When you're alone in your corner office with your vindictive little victory, you're going to realize you threw away 2 years over one bad night. 2 years I spent being invisible. One bad night where I finally saw clearly. I'll take that trade. She left. Door closed. I stood there for a moment, alone in the conference room with its panoramic views and leather chairs and lingering smell of Giselle's expensive perfume. Did I feel bad? Not particularly. Petty? Maybe slightly. Satisfied? Absolutely. I spent the rest of Friday meeting with department heads, reviewing budgets and making nice with nervous employees who were probably wondering if the new boss was going to burn everything down. I wasn't. I was actually a pretty reasonable manager when people didn't mistake my patience for weakness. At 4 p.m., I got a call from my real estate attorney. The ownership group for the Marcus Tower, home of Aqua Restaurant, had accepted our offer. 30-day closing. Very reasonable price for a trophy property in Brickell. I authorized the purchase. Asked him to start drawing up plans for rebranding the restaurant space. At 6, I left the office, drove home. Changed into jeans and a t-shirt. Ordered Thai food because Giselle had always vetoed it. said it was too ethnic, which was both offensive and stupid. I ate pad thai on my couch, watched the Heat game, and contemplated my weekend plans. Tomorrow, meet with Thea Collins, go over her new responsibilities, make sure she felt supported. Sunday, brunch with Hugh to discuss long-term strategy for Summit. Monday, official announcement about the Marquis Tower acquisition. Somewhere in there, maybe buy new furniture since Giselle would presumably be collecting her things. My phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. This isn't over. I blocked it. Went back to my Thai food. The Heat won by 12. Good night overall. Saturday morning brought exactly what I expected. A moving truck outside my building, and Giselle coordinating the removal of her belongings with the efficiency of a military evacuation. I watched from my balcony, coffee in hand, as she directed two movers like a general commanding troops in retreat. The Audi stayed in the parking garage. Smart choice. Technically my car, registered in my name, insurance under my policy. She'd driven it for 18 months like it was hers. Funny how ownership details become important when relationships dissolve. She saw me on the balcony, stared up. I raised my coffee mug in a mock toast. She responded with a gesture I won't describe, but can confirm violated at least 3 standards of public decency. The movers pretended not to notice. Professional guys, probably seen worse during Miami divorce season. By noon, she was gone. Apartment felt bigger, lighter, like I'd been living with furniture that didn't quite fit and finally cleared it out. I spent the afternoon doing absolutely nothing productive, watched college football, ordered pizza, enjoyed the revolutionary concept of occupying my own space without commentary about my choices. Sunday brunch with Hugh was at Rusty Pelican in Key Biscayne. Waterfront views, stone crabs, Bloody Marys that could qualify as salads given the vegetable garnish situation. Hugh arrived in his standard weekend uniform. Khakis, polo shirt, boat shoes, looking like every country club member ever. He ordered the crab Benedict. I got the steak and eggs because I could. Giselle's attorney contacted our office yesterday afternoon, Hugh said, cutting into his eggs with surgical precision. She's exploring legal options regarding the personnel decisions. On what grounds? Wrongful demotion? She wasn't demoted. She was laterally transferred to a growth position. Her attorney used the phrase retaliatory workplace action. Hugh said it with the tone of someone reading ingredient labels on suspect deli meat. Based on what? Our personal relationship ended Thursday night. Employment decisions were made Friday morning, based on documented performance reviews and strategic business needs. Unless she's arguing that breakups grant permanent immunity from professional accountability, she has no case. Hugh smiled. That's essentially what I told her attorney, though with more billable words. She's also claiming you're keeping the Audi out of spite. It's my car. Title's in my name. She drove it with my permission, which I've now revoked. She wants a vehicle. She can lease one in Des Moines. I hear the Chevy dealerships are excellent there. Vindictive but legally sound. My favorite combination. Hugh sipped his Bloody Mary. What's the play with Aqua? Closing on the Marquis Tower in 30 days. I want the restaurant rebranded and relaunched by New Year's. High-end steakhouse. Something with presence. I'm thinking Calvin's. Subtle. I bought the building. I can name the restaurant after my cat if I want, except I don't have a cat. So Calvin's it is. Hugh nodded approvingly. The optics are spectacular. Man gets humiliated at restaurant, buys restaurant, renames it after himself. Very Roman Emperor energy. Exactly what I was going for. I finished my steak. What about Thea Collins, her transition going smoothly? Met with her Friday afternoon, sharp woman, grateful for the opportunity, terrified she'll mess it up, already working on a 60-day performance plan. She'll be fine. Better than fine, actually. Good. She earned it. 4 years of fetching coffee for someone who treated her like furniture. About time someone recognized talent. Monday morning I arrived at Summit's headquarters at 7:30. Early, but not aggressively early. Conference room at 8 with the senior leadership team. Thea was already there at 7:45. Laptop open, notes organized, looking like she'd been awake since 4 preparing. She probably had been. Morning, Thea. Ready for your first executive meeting? She looked up, startled. Mr. Mercer, yes, I think so. I've prepared a presentation on Q4 projections and client retention strategies. If you have time to review it beforehand, I'd appreciate feedback. Email it over. I'll look before the meeting. And it's Calvin. Mr. Mercer is my father, and he's retired in Asheville growing tomatoes. She relaxed slightly. Sent the presentation. I reviewed it in 15 minutes. It was excellent, detailed, data-driven, realistic projections, with conservative estimates and stretch goals. Everything Giselle's presentations had lacked. Thea had clearly been doing the actual analytical work while Giselle took credit in meetings. The 8 a.m. meeting went smoothly. The leadership team was cautiously optimistic about new direction. Markets were responding positively to the acquisition news. Stock had jumped 6% Friday afternoon. Several institutional investors had reached out expressing renewed confidence. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. At 9:30, my assistant, a wonderfully efficient woman named Lorraine, who'd been with Summit for 12 years, knocked on my office door. "Mr. Mercer, there's a situation in the lobby you should be aware of." Situation, corporate speak for problem. I followed her downstairs. The situation was Giselle. Again, this time with Felicia in tow as apparent moral support. They were arguing with Monica, the receptionist, who looked ready to call security, but was maintaining professional composure admirably. "Ladies, something I can help with?" Giselle spun around. She'd dressed for battle. Designer suit, full makeup, heels that added 3 inches and probably cost more than Monica's monthly rent. "We need to talk. Now, privately. My office, 5 minutes. Alone." I looked at Felicia. "This doesn't concern you." Felicia opened her mouth. Giselle grabbed her arm. They had a whispered conference. Felicia left, shooting me a look that could have curdled milk. Giselle followed me to the elevator. Back in the corner office, she remained standing. I sat. "Power dynamics matter." "You're making a mistake," she started. "Moving me to Iowa, promoting someone with no management experience, buying the building where we had dinner. This isn't business, Calvin. This is a tantrum. You're entitled to your interpretation. Was there something specific you needed? Or did you just come here to critique my leadership style? I need you to reconsider the relocation. I've built my entire life here. My friends, my network, my career. You can't just erase that because your ego got bruised. Your career at Summit is what I choose it to be. That's how ownership works. I'm offering you a legitimate position with growth potential in an expanding market. Most people would consider that an opportunity. Most people weren't dating their boss 2 days ago. We weren't dating 2 days ago. We were done Thursday night. You just didn't realize it yet." She sat down finally. Calculated move, trying intimacy. "Calvin, please. I know I hurt you. I know Thursday was bad. I was showing off, being stupid, trying to impress people who don't matter. I'm sorry, genuinely sorry, but punishing me professionally is crossing a line. You think this is punishment? Giselle, I'm giving you exactly what you gave me: dismissal, underestimation, public humiliation. The only difference is I'm doing it through legitimate business channels instead of dinner party comedy. So, this is revenge. This is consequences meeting actions. Turns out when you spend 2 years treating someone like they're beneath you, they might actually be evaluating you the whole time." She stood again. Paced. Classic Giselle Tell when she was losing control of a situation. "What do you want? An apology? A public statement? What will make this stop?" "Nothing stops it. The decisions are made. You have 3 choices. Accept the Iowa position and relocate by Friday. Negotiate a severance package and resign, or fight this legally and lose while accumulating attorney fees you can't afford. Your call. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I had 15 years of practice being underestimated. Teaches you to be thorough." She walked to the door, hand on the handle, stopped. "For what it's worth, I did care about you. Maybe not enough, maybe not the right way, but I did. Caring requires seeing someone. You never saw me, Giselle. You saw a placeholder, someone nice enough, convenient enough, patient enough to tolerate being your emotional support human while you focused on your actual priorities. You cared about having a boyfriend. You never cared about having me." She left without responding. Door closed softly, professional to the end, even in defeat. Tuesday brought the public announcement about the Marquis Tower acquisition. Bloomberg ran it. Wall Street Journal picked it up. Local Miami news covered it with the headline, "Local Investor Expands Real Estate Empire." The article mentioned CM Holdings' acquisition of Summit Capital, the Marquis Tower purchase, and plans for upscale dining establishment rebranding. They'd tried to interview me. I'd declined. Hugh had released a statement, very corporate, very boring, very deliberately uninformative about personal details. Wednesday afternoon, I got a text from unknown number. Iowa position accepted. Start date November the 1st, professional courtesy going forward. I saved the number under Giselle, work only, and replied, acknowledged. HR will coordinate details. Good luck with the expansion. Professional, distant, exactly what our relationship had become. Thursday, I met with architects and designers about Calvin's. Premium steakhouse concept, raw bar, extensive wine list, live jazz on weekends, the works. Target opening, New Year's Eve. Invitation-only launch party. Press coverage. Miami's newest high-end dining destination, brought to you by the guy who used to sit quietly in the corner while his girlfriend performed for audiences. Friday morning, 1 week after the Aqua disaster, I stood in my office looking at Miami's skyline and took inventory. Summit Capital, thriving under new leadership. Thea, exceeding expectations in her first week. Giselle, packing for Des Moines. Aqua, soon to be Calvin's. Personal life dramatically simplified. My phone buzzed. Hugh. Felicia Armstrong requesting meeting, claims she has information about summit operations you need to know. Thoughts? Felicia. Giselle's best friend / primary competition. This would be interesting. I replied, Monday morning, 9 a.m., your office. You present. Hugh sent back, she's going to try selling out Giselle. Of course she is. That's what happens when you surround yourself with people who only liked you for your position. Saturday night I went back to Aqua, one last time before construction started. Sat at the bar, ordered an IPA. The bartender, a guy named Joel who'd been working there for 6 years, recognized me. You're the new owner, right, Mr. Mercer? Guilty. You worried about your job? Little bit, yeah. Rumors say you're gutting the place. Not gutting, elevating. You any good at craft cocktails? Best in Brickell. Then you're keeping your job. Actually, I'm going to need a head bartender for the relaunch. Interested? His face lit up. Seriously? Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. It's going to be intense work getting ready for New Year's. But if you're willing to put in the effort, I pay well and treat people with respect. 2 things the previous management apparently struggled with. I finished my beer. Left a $100 tip. Walked out of Aqua for the last time as customer, knowing the next time I walked through those doors, it would be as owner of something entirely new. Sunday, I drove to Coconut Grove Marina, looked at boats, thought about buying one, decided against it. Boats were money pits, maybe next year. The week had been exhausting, satisfying, vindicating, professionally successful, but exhausting. Revenge, I learned, required a lot of paperwork and meetings, way less dramatic than movies suggested. Way more effective, though. I drove home. Ordered Chinese because I could. Watched the Dolphins lose again because some things never change. Fell asleep on my couch with an empty carton of lo mein and Sports Center playing highlights. Best week of my life so far. And it was only the beginning. 3 months later, mid-January, and Miami was doing its winter thing where everyone else froze while we complained about 70-degree weather being chilly. Calvin's had opened New Year's Eve to a sold-out crowd, rave reviews in the Herald, and a waiting list that stretched into March. Turns out humiliation makes excellent marketing when you spin it right. The press loved the story. Local investor transforms site of personal embarrassment into premier dining destination. Very Horatio Alger meets Gordon Ramsay. Summit Capital had exceeded Q4 projections by 18%. Thea Collins was being courted by headhunters offering absurd packages, which meant I gave her a raise and equity stake to keep her. Smart business. Loyal, competent people are harder to find than most executives realize, usually because those executives are too busy performing for audiences to notice who's actually doing the work. Giselle sent her resignation from Des Moines on January 7th. 3 months, 2 weeks in Iowa was apparently her breaking point. The resignation letter was professional, brief, mentioned pursuing opportunities more aligned with her geographic preferences. Translation: she hated every frozen minute of Midwest winter and couldn't handle being 800 miles from her Miami social circle. HR processed it within 24 hours. I signed off without comment. She'd lasted longer than I'd expected, honestly. Felicia, in a plot twist nobody saw coming except everyone who understood basic human nature, had indeed tried selling out Giselle during our November meeting. brought Hugh a folder full of documentation about expenses Giselle had allegedly fudged, client complaints she'd supposedly buried, performance metrics she'd apparently inflated. Very thorough, very desperate, very transparent attempt to secure her own position by throwing her best friend under the corporate bus. I'd thanked her for the information, had accounting review everything, found minor discrepancies that amounted to roughly $3,000 in questionable expense reports over 2 years, parking violations she'd charged to the company card, personal lunches coded as client meetings, that sort of thing. Nothing criminal, nothing worth pursuing, just garden variety corner cutting that most companies ignored until they needed ammunition. I'd kept the file, hadn't used it, didn't need to. Felicia had eliminated herself from consideration for any advancement by demonstrating she'd betray anyone for perceived benefit. That kind of person is useful exactly never. She was still at Summit, still in her same position, still probably wondering why loyalty to herself hadn't translated into reward. Some lessons take longer than others. The Audi situation had resolved itself amusingly. Giselle's attorney had pushed the vehicle issue for about 2 weeks before realizing that fighting over a car titled in my name was expensive, pointless, and made her look petty. She'd dropped it. I'd sold the Audi, donated the proceeds to a women's business scholarship fund at Miami-Dade College. Tax deduction plus excellent optics plus genuine good deed, triple win. I'd started dating again. Casually, nothing serious. Mostly to remember what it felt like to have conversations where someone actually asked about my day and listened to the answer. Turns out there are many women in Miami who find competence attractive and don't require you to perform inadequacy for their comfort. Revolutionary concept. My dad called from Asheville in December, having read about the Summit acquisition in some retirement community newsletter. Saw your name in the paper. Your mother's telling everyone at the club her son's a big shot now. Tell Mom I'm the same person I was before, just with more conference calls. She knows. She's proud anyway. So am I, kiddo. You did good. That conversation meant more than the Bloomberg coverage, the Wall Street Journal mention, or any business accolade. My parents had raised me to be decent, competent, and humble. Turned out you could be all three and still build empires when people weren't looking. Sitting in my office on this particular January morning, watching cruise ships parade out of the port toward Caribbean destinations, I thought about Thursday night at Aqua. That moment when Giselle had called me experimental and everyone had laughed and I'd decided enough was enough. That specific crystallization point where patience stopped being virtue and started being acceptance of disrespect. People ask if I regret how things went down. If I wish I'd handled it differently, been less vindictive, taken the high road. Honestly? No. The high road is overrated. It's where nice people go to be invisible while others take credit for their work. I'd spent 2 years on the high road. The view was terrible and the company was worse. What I learned, being underestimated is a gift if you're patient enough to use it. People reveal their true character when they think you're not worth impressing. Giselle showed me exactly who she was every day for 2 years. I just finally started believing her. Second lesson, competence doesn't require advertisement. I never needed to prove myself to Giselle's friends or Marcus or Barrett the hedge fund guy with his sockless loafers. Their opinions were irrelevant the moment I stopped valuing them. Turns out you can just do excellent work quietly and let results speak. Wild concept in an age of personal branding and LinkedIn performance art. Third, revenge is best served with impeccable documentation and legitimate business justification. Nothing I did was illegal, unethical, or even particularly unusual for corporate restructuring. I made sound decisions that happened to have personally satisfying consequences. That's not revenge, that's just capitalism with a sense of irony. Thea stopped by my office around 10. Morning, Calvin. Got a minute? Want to run something by you about the Atlanta expansion. Come in. Coffee? Already had 3. I'm going to vibrate through the floor soon. She sat, opened her laptop, pulled up projections. We spent 20 minutes discussing market analysis, potential acquisition targets, risk assessment. She was brilliant, prepared, confident in ways she hadn't been 3 months ago. As she left, I thought about the fact that promoting her had been simultaneously the pettiest and best decision I'd made. Petty, because it specifically replaced Giselle with the person Giselle had most undervalued. Best because Thea was genuinely exceptional at the job and deserved recognition. Sometimes good business and personal satisfaction align. Those are the best days. My phone buzzed, text from unknown number. Saw the Calvin's review in the Herald. Congratulations. It looks beautiful. I hope you're happy. Giselle, from wherever she'd landed post-Iowa. I stared at the message for a moment, considered responses ranging from gracious to cutting, and ultimately decided on something in between. Thank you. I am. Good luck with whatever comes next. I meant it. Not the warm, fuzzy forgiveness kind of meaning it. More the genuine indifference kind. She'd been a chapter. That chapter was closed. Time to write new ones. Calvin's was fully booked through February. Summit was expanding into 3 new markets. My portfolio was diversifying into residential development. Life was complicated, demanding, occasionally exhausting, and entirely on my terms. I'd gone from invisible boyfriend to visible success, from experimental phase to established player, from being laughed at in rooftop restaurants to owning the building those restaurants occupied. Turns out ambition isn't everything, but it sure beats being furniture in someone else's life story. And that's exactly what makes it everything.